Welcome to the Weekly Roar, coming live from the Lion's Den, helping new managers become great leaders and awesome bosses. And now, here's your host, Greg Storch.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Weekly Roar. Thanks for coming back to the Lion's Den for this week's watch party. It's hard to believe that just 1 week ago, I was attending the International Leadership Conference in Orlando with my mentor, John C. Maxwell. That was my fourth year going down to Orlando to attend the conference, and it was amazing to be surrounded and connected to so many great leaders down there. If you want to learn and grow, you got to surround yourself with like-minded people who support you and can help you get where you are going. One of my favorite sayings from John right now is that one is too small a number to accomplish great things. In other words, we're better together. And I was definitely reminded of that last week down in Orlando. The other awesome thing that I wanted to share with you was that I had the opportunity to speak in front of over 3,100 attendees at that conference. I gave a 3-minute speech, and I had been working on it for a couple of months. I was selected as one of the top 10 presenters out of about, I think there were around 60 total applicants. I'm not positive. But man, it was such an honor for me to get up on that stage in front of my peers and share my story. You know, I learned a lot of lessons through the process, but one of the biggest lessons I learned was that just because we want to do something doesn't mean we should be doing it. I've always dreamed of being up on stage and speaking to people. I've never had a fear of public speaking. But having the opportunity to finally get up in front of over 3,000 people was a really great test on whether I should be a speaker, right? When I get up on that stage, I felt at home. And that's when I knew I was born to speak. Anyway, we are actually holding the Weekly Roar today from Santorini, Greece. What the? I know, right? I've been planning this surprise trip for my wife for the past month as we celebrate her 40th birthday this month. It's an amazing milestone, and I'm lucky to be able to celebrate this milestone with her. So yeah, here we are in Greece. All right, it's time to speak about another concept in the foundations of leadership. I can't believe this, but after today's Weekly Roar, I have only one more concept left to discuss with you. Man, it has been an amazing 5 months, and I hope you agree. I hope you've been with me during these concepts over the past 5 months. We're actually wrapping it up on 9/11 next week. So before I jump into today's topic, let me get my introduction out of the way, just in case we have some new people joining us in the Lion's Den. All right, everybody, I'm Greg Storch. I am the founder of Lion Enterprise. It's a leadership development and coaching business, and I'm placing my focus on helping organizations develop positive work cultures. I'm a certified professional leadership coach and also a certified speaker and trainer. All right, I held last week's Weekly Roar on the day I touched back down in Venice. Man, there were a lot of people traveling from the conference. So did you have a chance to join me as I continued my Follow the Leader series? Last week's topic was about how our timing as leaders is just as critical as knowing what to do and where to go. Timing is everything. Without knowing when to lead, it doesn't much matter that you have a destination or a means to go there. I called them the 3 W's of leadership: the what, where, and when. And those make up the 3 main legs of a leadership stool. If you take out any one of those 3 legs, and you're gonna fall over. Hey, I have great news for you. If you didn't make it into the Lion's Den for the last weekly roar, don't worry about it. All you have to do is jump over to my website, www.lion-enterprise.com. When you get there, click on the link at the top of the page for Lion's Pride Library. When you get there, you're going to see all of my videos in there. And last week's video is number 69, which makes today 70 weekly roars in a row. Man, that's amazing. Going into the Lion's Pride Library is a great way for you to get more of the roar. So today's weekly roar is about growth, really. And we talk a lot about growth. It's about growing as a leader and how we really start to grow depending on who we're focused on leading. Now, a lot of you watching this are probably already familiar with the importance of personal growth. We spend a lot of time talking about that. I've spent a lot of time reading and applying the 15 invaluable laws of growth. But today, I want to just speak about the differences in your growth as a leader when you shift your focus from developing your followers and developing other leaders. There's a big difference, and I want to talk about that today. So let's get this kicked off. I've spent a lot of time, years really, on my personal growth. Why? Well, there's a lot of reasons why, but I knew that I had to develop myself as a leader if I wanted to be able to make an impact. And that's the beauty of personal growth. It develops us to the point where we establish the foundations to be able to start to develop others. The natural progression is to move from personal growth to leading teams, right? Helping to develop your followers. As leaders, when we're developing our teams or our followers, we still continue to grow. Developing our teams, our families, our congregations, our towns, our cities, it's the beginning of being able to reach bigger goals. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of today's weekly roar that 1 is too small a number. And that's true. When you start to develop teams, you're able to accomplish more, of course. That makes a lot of sense because you multiply, right? And you can obviously do it in less time because now you have the combined effort of more than just you. 1. You also have your team working together in pursuit of a common goal. We're better together. Over the past few years, I've had the opportunity to work with some really great people who are doing some amazing things. Coming together as accountability partners or even as thinking partners has allowed me to gain more ground than I ever would have had I attempted to accomplish those things by myself. Many leaders spend their time in the zone where they're developing their followers, and that's a great place to be. We owe it to them to ensure that they have the opportunities to develop their strengths. I feel like it's one of the main things we do as leaders, develop those we lead, coaching and mentoring them so they can become leaders like us. You may have heard of the saying that our job as leaders is to work ourselves out of a job. But have you ever really thought about that? What does that mean to you? To me, it simply means that my main role as a leader is to develop those I lead and prepare them to rise to my level and eventually take over. It's not just building a ladder for them to climb. It's holding that ladder steady so they have a sturdy base in order to make their ascent. But here's where the rub can come in for us as leaders. When we find ourselves in leadership positions, when we're the ones leading the charge, we can get a little impatient because we're the ones with the vision. We already know where we're trying to go, what direction we're trying to take our teams or our organizations. When we have that kind of clarity around the big picture, we have a tendency to just want to get there. We expect everybody to have that same grasp of the concept and the journey of what it's going to take to get there, but they don't, because we're the leader. We're the one that developed it. And we want to get there quickly. And sometimes we forget that we need the help of our team to actually get to where we're trying to go. The problem is that a lot of times our teams or our organizations, they're lagging a little bit behind us as the leader who has that vision. So we end up just not getting there as fast as in our minds we think we should be getting there, right? The difference between the leader's speed and the follower's speed in moving towards that goal, that creates a tension for us as leaders. They just want to go. A leader wants to, they know where they're headed, they know how to get there, and they just want to go and they want to grow. But they're limited by that tension that's created between them and where they're at and where their followers are at. You see, when you develop yourself, you get to experience a certain level of personal success. And when you're at this stage that we are developing teams, that's when our organization gets to experience growth, right? So developing yourself, personal success, starting to lead teams, your organization starts to experience growth. But today's concept is meant to change the playing field for you altogether. It's about what happens when you start to develop other leaders, not your followers. See, when we start to develop other leaders, our growth blows up. Now, I'm not saying that you won't experience growth if you're focused on developing your followers or attracting followers. I'm not saying that at all. But if you want to reach hyperspeed, 1 million gigawatts, then shifting your focus can get you there. Shifting your focus, meaning away from attracting followers and focusing on building other leaders. But I'm going to tell you, this mindset is not typical for leaders. Most leaders want to lead their people, their teams, and they focus mostly on, of course, the followers, right? Developing other leaders, though, really takes a completely different attitude and focus. I want to talk to you about some of the key differences between leaders who are focused on attracting followers and those leaders who have turned their sights to develop other leaders. Now, one of the first things is the difference in focus from being needed to being succeeded. See what I did there? For me, as a leader, I get excited about having the responsibility of leading other people. The rush of having influence to get people focused in the same direction so I can get things done. But some of the reasons that motivate me aren't always great supporting reasons for wanting to step up and lead. I mean, having the ability to influence others is leadership, but good leaders really understand that it's not only about leading for the sake of their followers, but also for what they can leave behind once they've vacated their leadership position. Another important difference is where we spend our time. When we're developing our followers, we tend to play victim to the Pareto Principle. Now, you have probably heard of the Pareto Principle. Interesting, I live in Italy, and I believe the Pareto Principle came from the theory that 80% of the wealth in Italy comes from 20% of the population. But that's exactly what the Pareto Principle states. It's basically 80% of the effects come from 20% of the causes. So when we're leading teams, the people that require a good majority of our time are those people that are in the bottom 20%. The bottom 20 take 80% of our time. There's the 20-80 rule. The weakest members of your team are going to take up a majority of your time. But when you shift to developing leaders, you don't allow that to happen. Those leaders who are developing other leaders, they're seeking out the best 20%, the ones with the highest leadership potential. And by doing that, by working with the best, they multiply. They multiply leadership, and they can help the rest come along. That's the key. It's that multiplication. It's flexing our time, right? If I have 24 hours in a day to do things, and then I only have 24 hours in a day to do things. But if I join forces with another leader who also has 24 hours, we both now have 48 hours in a day. It's the multiplication effect. So doing those things, focusing on the strong 20% allows us to focus on people's strengths instead of spending our time focusing. Sorry, I can't talk today. What was I saying? Okay, yeah. So spending time with the top 20% allows us to focus on people's strengths, right? Instead of focusing our time trying to deal with people's weaknesses. Now, these are the folks who can't grasp the basics. And if we're spending all of our time focused on correcting the weaknesses, we negatively affect performance of the team. One of the other differences that I'm thinking about between a leader who's focused on attracting followers and a leader who focuses on developing other leaders is that when a leader spends their time attracting followers, they experience growth by adding people to their teams. Now, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that if you keep your focus on attracting followers as a leader, then the growth you do experience is going to be slower than if you spent your time focusing on developing other leaders. Does that make sense? I mean, think about it. It's the power of exponential growth, right? Because if I'm attracting followers all the time, my impact is limited to that one follower. But when I focus on developing other leaders, I now have the ability to not only affect that one leader, but I'm also now impacting all of the followers that are following that one leader. You multiply your effect with the same amount of effort. I know by now you're like, aha, the magic wand. I just wave this and my problems will go away. I know, not so fast. You're probably thinking, well, if it was so easy to increase our impact as leaders by focusing on developing leaders, then why aren't leaders doing it more? It's real simple. It's not easy to do. And we shy away from doing the hard things. So I want to talk about a little bit of the struggles that you'll face if you try and shift your focus as a leader to developing other leaders. Leaders are very busy, and developing other leaders takes a lot of energy and time. And that's why we don't see it happening a lot. But listen, for the past 5 months, I've been talking to you about concepts that will help you be a better leader than you already are. So, all I'm trying to share with you with this concept is that if you want to compound your growth, then develop other leaders. Spend your time there. You also need to know that it's not going to be easy if you decide to shift your focus away from attracting followers and growing leaders. Here's why. First of all, leaders, they're hard to find, man. Leaders, leaders are eagles. They don't fly in flocks together. When you see one, you see one. They soar alone. Really good leaders make things happen. They conquer opportunities and they have a gift to influence others to perform with excellence. And so the reality is there just aren't that many people running around out there who do it on a consistent basis. And that's what makes a great leader, is somebody who's consistent at what they're doing. So it's really hard to find those leaders. That's challenge number one. Challenge number two is that even if you do find those leaders, you have to convince them to join you, to follow you. And these people are just like you. I mean, we don't aimlessly just follow other people. Leaders don't naturally take on a role of follower. They're leaders themselves, right? So if you want to have a fighting chance at this, you'll need to probably share a common vision with that person. They'll need to subscribe to the approach you're taking on where you're trying to go and how you're planning on getting there. And they're gonna want to know, who else did you put on this bus with them? Who are the other passengers, right? Who else are you taking with you? They're going to want to know that. The thing is, they're not going to join you just because you're awesome. Your organization also has to create the right environment that these people would be attracted to join. So it's not even your magnetic personality. You have to be in an environment that's going to attract them as well. So if you want to see growth, create an environment that's going to attract other leaders like yourself. Okay, so let's say that you do find and attract other leaders. The last challenge is going to be retaining them. You got to keep those leaders, right? To continue to grow in your organization and grow at an exponential pace. Now, you can overcome the challenge by becoming a better leader yourself. And the cool thing about it is, this is where we come full circle on this whole thing, because developing yourself as a leader is a result of personal growth and development and intentionality. So you have to place yourself in a position where you can be a person of value who can add value to other leaders. It takes a leader to raise up another leader. Do enough of that enough times, and the leaders you grow may never want to leave. Now, I'm pretty sure I have the full spectrum of leadership that joins me every time for the weekly roar. Some of you are very experienced leaders, while others of you are just starting out your leadership journey. I just want to wrap things up here on this concept by telling you that regardless of where you are on that leadership spectrum, doesn't matter. What I want you to be empowered with is the knowledge that if you want to give yourself the best chance to reach your potential, or give your organization the best chance to reach their largest goals, you should focus on developing leaders and not just on attracting followers. Here's why. When leaders develop leaders, they change the trajectory of almost everything that follows for them and the organization. I mean, the effect is compounded. Great leaders understand that they can't just throw resources, reduce costs, increase profit margins, or implement quality control, or anything else like that in their organizations to multiply the effect on their organizations. Great leaders know that tapping into the compounding effect of growing other leaders is the only way to get there, and get there quickly. And now you know it too. All right, you guys, that is another concept in the foundations of leadership. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So if you have some comments, leave them below in the comment section. Let me know what you think. Thanks so much for tuning in again this week with me from Santorini, Greece, for another weekly roar. I appreciate your support. And remember, if you like this content, please share out the link to the weekly roar video that I'm going to post in the Lion's Den after this watch party's over. Now, remember, just as a reminder, don't share out what you're watching right now, this watch party, because I'm pretty sure once the watch party ends, the link to it ends also. I don't think you can view it again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post a link to the video in a new post, and that's what you can share out through your own networks. And I'd really appreciate it if you would do that, because I want to grow other leaders too. Hey, I'm going to be back here again next week, back home in Vicenza, Italy. So same place, same time, to speak about another concept in the foundations of leadership. I'm going to wrap up this series called Follow the Leader: Concepts in the Foundations of Leadership by speaking about how important it is to start with our end in mind. Not the end, our end in mind. And figure out how we're going to continue to add value to others long after we're gone. Yeah, I'm going to touch on the importance of leaving a legacy and what that all means to us as leaders. And I hope you're going to join me next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern time for that final concept. Okay, you guys, until we meet again next week, remember, be powerful, but stay poised just like a lion. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for watching the Weekly Roar live event at lionenterprise.com. If you enjoyed this video, please tell others to join us each week here in the Lion's Den. Thanks again, and see you next week.